Hello, my name's Jade, and today we will be discussing The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. If you've been living under a rock and you don't know what this is a prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy. We all know the Hunger Games is one of the ones that I think everyone needs to read. I just think it brings up so many interesting questions and debates, and I really think the way it reflects our society is quite interesting. This one has a lot of that as well. I know there's been a lot of mixed feelings about it. I haven't read a ton of reviews. I've been trying to stay away so that my opinions can be my own and completely unbiased. I enjoyed it. I think Suzanne Collins, she's good at writing. If you enjoyed the Hunger Games, you enjoy Suzanne Collins, chances are I think you'll enjoy this. How necessary this is, I think, has been a debate. And coming out of the Hunger Games, one of the things that I really wanted to know more about was kind of how the Hunger Games came to be, why we decided on the Hunger Games. We know the Hunger Games serves to punish the districts, but it feels so specific, and this, we follow the 10th Hunger Games. So we get a lot of that, and we get a lot of world building. We see a more in-depth view of the capital and the aftermath of the rebellion, kind of being inside someone's point of view who is from capital, and his capital through and through was really interesting, I think. It is supposed to be an origin story with Snow, and another thing I've heard that it serves really well as like a prequel in terms of the world and setting up world building and answering these philosophical questions. Whether or not it's necessary, I don't know, but I'm really glad to have read it for one. But as an origin story for Snow, it's a little weak, and I can see why, and I kind of am in two minds. I had a very strong point of view come up to the very end, and in the end, the way things panned out, I might have changed my mind a little bit. So I've not really told you the premise, because all I needed to know was that it was a prequel from the Hunger Games, and I was sold. I found out that Snow, and I was like, sure, why not? This is a prequel novel to the Hunger Games trilogy, following President Snow when he's like 18 actually, I think. He's a mentor for the 10th Hunger Games. Yeah, that's all you need to know. Back says, ambition will fuel him, competition will drive him, but power has its price. It really bothered me that this last one didn't end with a him as well. I have the Waterstones edition, which is really pretty. I read it in 8 days, which is much quicker than I anticipated considering it's a 500-page book. I'm a very slow reader, and so for me, that is very fast. I'd give it somewhere between a 7 and an 8 out of 10. As sitting here right now, I'm not 100% sure. Editing Jade might be sure, and she might be shoving in your face right now what she thinks. Depends on kind of what interpretation I end up landing on, I think. It's enjoyable, but it wasn't like my favourite. And in terms of cleverness, I'd give it somewhere between a 7 and 8. So it all depends on kind of how those things fall for me. Because how well it does, I think, could be open for debate. So that's what I'm going to say. For the spoiler section, if you've yet to read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, I recommend you leave now because I'm going to talk about everything that happens in this book. So goodbye if you've not read the book. Like I said, I love the philosophical side of things. Actually, in the back of my edition, there's a conversation between David Levithan and Suzanne Collins, and she talks about a lot of her influences on all that stuff. I didn't actually finish it. There's all these philosophical questions about our true nature and how we should be ruled and those kinds of things. In my mind, kept coming back to Lord of the Flies because that asks similar philosophical questions on the stance of our true nature, like how destructive are we, how do we need to be ruled, how society would work if we didn't have an overruling structure, if we didn't have these rules set in place, if our morals weren't so grounded into us, but also when these things disappear, would we descend into chaos? William Golding very much so has the view that we would all disrupt into chaos and go around killing each other, that we need like a capital per se to overrule us. John Green made a really great video dissecting it, and I stand true to a lot of the opinions he had, so I'm going to link that below. A lot of those questions kept coming up again and again, and Lucy Gray was kind of our voice of reasoning, like, we're not all bad. I think that's a very overarching view to have, and Coriolanus was the kind of, no, we're all bad, we're going to descend into chaos, as he kind of was morphed by Dr. Ghoul throughout the thing, and he talks about how much he hates her, but the influences she put in him, I think she did influence him. A big question for me was how different was Snow in the beginning of the book to the end of the book. We're all looking to find how he became the villain he is. A lot of these origin stories typically start with them being a good guy, and come the end they turn into a bad guy. And so I went into this with that mindset, just kind of like unnaturally thinking he's not been corrupted yet. I think that's definitely an interpretation you could have. He is still naive. He's not been corrupted by Dr. Ghoul yet. The Hunger Games, I do think, probably morphed his views. Being in District 12, I think, definitely solidified a lot of things for him. The question for me come the end was, were these things that were within him all along? They were always there. It just took these experiences to solidify them, and it took Dr. Ghoul to kind of eat them out of him, because he's capital through and through. He's constantly talking down on the districts and constantly talking about how the people there, they're these savages and that how dare they rebel, and he's so stubborn that the rebellion was wrong. The way they keep trying is bad, and the way he kind of looks down on Sejanus for thinking that his true home is District 2. Like, how could you think your true home is District 2 when you're now in the capital, and the capital is so much better? Coming from someone who is now broke, and the capital is very soon gonna look down on you in the way, the nature of the capital, the kind of predatory hierarchy that's there. Very soon he's gonna be out on the streets and they're gonna become nothing in the eyes of the capital. That to me proves that his alliance is really deep with the capital, and he can't even open his mind to the interpretation that the districts might be right. He doesn't even consider it, ever. There are times where he nerdy say it, but he never quite gets there. So I think a lot of these views were in him for the very beginning. It's not so much an arc of like good to bad, it's more so kind of the battle. I think he has some optimistic traits within him, and you could argue that maybe if things went differently, he'd been less corrupt, but I think ultimately things would have always turned out the way they did. He would have always sided with the capital over anything else, and so because of that, I think he would have always ended up the ruthless ruler we know of him today. Of course, that's one interpretation. You could interpret it that he was more optimistic and naive in the beginning, and it's through the Hunger Games and Ghoul and all of his experiences throughout this book that ultimately solidified those things, but I think they were solidified. I personally think they were there in the beginning. He wasn't ever, I think, a good person. He was so cold from the very beginning. The only people he truly cared about ever throughout this whole book was Tigress and Grandmam, and even then Grandmam, not really. Tigress is the only one he ever cared about. Even when he was saying how much he loved Lucy Gray, he was constantly going back and forth. I never felt it. I never believed him wholeheartedly, and I think that's so interesting. And I think I've heard complaints about how the romance didn't kind of go the way people wanted to, and it felt very wish-washy, but I loved that because it stood true to his character. I think this was something that really annoyed me at time, because I was like, but I don't believe him. He doesn't actually love her, because he's talking about someone who's going to die and he doesn't seem to care. It almost felt a bit insta-lovey even. I do think his relationship with Lucy, when it started developing, like he told her he cares about her, she matters to him, that kind of seems a little bit out of nowhere. And I think from Lucy's great perspective that works, because I think she's not naive, she's very good-natured. And so I could see it from her, and she does have this naive feel. She's not naive, but she has that feeling to her. And with Snow, because it was so wish-washy, the insta-love and the wish-washiness I think meshed together really well. And it's the same way he talks about the girl who got bit by the snake, Clemencia. He would talk about how Clemencia and they all had really weird names. All of these weird named friends, he would talk about his alliances with them, and he would be going back and forth. And I don't want to throw this term around, it's been a while since I've looked into it. He felt like he had like sociopathic tendencies for sure. Like empathy, did he have it? Does he have it though? And so if you like look at that, look at him as someone who doesn't relate to people the other way, someone who only trusts Tigress, everyone else to him is disposable. That was my view of him from the very beginning, how cold and calculating he was. And if we look what happened with Sejanus, he didn't even care in the end. When Sejanus died, Sejanus is my favourite character. I was very upset. When Sejanus died, he feared for his life. That was it. He was never once sorry. And even when he found out that he was the one that killed Sejanus through recording the Jabberjay, he didn't care. He was just relieved that, okay, I'm not dead yet. Yay. And I know he didn't particularly like Sejanus, but Sejanus was the one that kind of saved him from his suicide, and he'd been spending time with Sejanus, so there was reason for him to then like Sejanus, even if he didn't before. Up until this point he found him annoying, and he wasn't. He didn't care. There are so many examples of Snow that could lead to him having sociopathic tendencies, like when Arachne was killed, he didn't really seem to care, and how he talked about Lucy and her dying so flippantly, and the way he didn't understand with what Sejanus was going through. Even a lot of other people in the class hated the Hunger Games and didn't understand them. Snow didn't seem repulsed by them. Maybe he did at times. I think that he would come in waves. At the time he seemed indifferent. It wasn't until he started getting all lovey-dovey with Lucy right before she went in, Maud without second thought. Like, I mean, to an extent that was survival. He didn't feel any remorse for killing Maud. It didn't affect him at all. Make a good cold-blooded killer. That, along with the fact that he's capital, makes me think he would have always become the person that we know in the Hunger Games. It was highly likely. It was always within him. It wasn't a good to bad ordeal. He was like that. This is just how it came up. He was bad in the beginning of the book, just also naive, and it hadn't been solidified, had these waivers of goodness in him. So I think we kind of maybe believed that maybe he could be swayed, maybe he could have been if the book was drastically different. I think it was when we were in the Hunger Games, because I was like, it's so interesting seeing it from a mentor's perspective, which I think is obviously why she did this, because Katniss were in the games, is we want to see it from outside the game. I kind of wanted different perspectives, and I thought it'd be interesting if we were just kind of flipping around all over the place, like Lucy, Suzanne, Dean Highbottom, the other tributes in the games, maybe even Dr. Gold. I thought would have been really interesting to see all of it, kind of in a Rick Yancey maybe style. Have Snow be like our hardcore, true protagonist, have to spend the most time with him, but just every now and then see someone else's point of view, because Snow was such an unrelatable character because he was so cold, the way he was flip-flopping his opinions about things and true feelings towards people. And I think the third person in general, the whole book did feel quite detached. I thought one way that we could go around that would be to switch POVs, and I think would get a better feel for the games because we'd be inside of it sometimes, because they were so different from the games that we know. The fact that they were just in the arena, they felt really primitive. So much of the stuff that we know now disturbingly was suggested by Snow, things like the betting, sending in the food. People didn't care, which I found really nice, because I was like, why do people get so excited about kids killing each other? In this one, they're disgusted by it. They don't even want to watch the games, they don't want to think about them, they hate the fact that they exist. They didn't even get new clothes, they went in with the same old clothes. They were kept in the zoo. They were starved, which, why would you starve them right before they're going in the games? If you want to get people to watch, you want to put on a good show. And half-starved people, they're not going to fight very well. I'm sorry to be the one to break it to you. It's because they were treating them as district. And obviously in the Hunger Games now, they get treated like luxury before they go. And I don't know if it's like an act of, feel sorry for you, you're gonna die. Here, have these nice things so that they'll be more likely to engage in the games because they're being treated well. And I couldn't believe how different it was. That was so fascinating to watch. The writing style, it felt very slow. I don't know if the book needed to be as long as it was. For a long time that was my feeling, that I didn't like the writing style particularly because it felt so detached, and then the way that Snow was, it felt so far removed from the story. It felt very much like a story being told to us from Way Whence Was. Way Whence Was, is that a thing? When Sejanus died, I was sad, I was appalled, but I didn't care half as much as I expected to. And I think it's to do with the writing style. So I thought having multiple perspectives would have helped with that. Like I said, a lot of my thoughts can be grouped into these two pools of thoughts. The fact that it was an arc from good to bad, if we were going to lean in with that view, other perspectives, try and get closer to the characters, trying to get things happening a little bit quicker. But now I'm sitting here thinking, if we're going with the view, it's more of like a psychological battle within him that it was always there. The writing style might have helped because it's so determined. You have such a clear view of things. I think Snow is an unreliable narrator, and it really came out in the end. And because it was so, I don't even know how to describe the writing style other than detached. It has that tone like you're being told a story from long ago, and it's very proper and formal. It lends to the tone that it was long ago. We know what's ultimately going to happen. That's a problem with a lot of prequels, and that was a problem I was thinking that might be why it's so slow. So I don't think she's trying to beat it around the bush and make it new and exciting. This was a tale from whence when. I think she's trying to embrace that. Tell us like a scary tale how Snow and the Hunger Games came to be. That was another thing I was frustrated with at times, because we knew how it's going to end. And it was taking so long to get there, and the pacing kind of fell off at times. Part 3 was really long, and for a really long time nothing happened. He was just kind of laying around in District 12, pretending that he's in love with Lucy. And then things didn't happen until the very end of the very last chapter, when things just like switched like that. And I think what happened there could be interpreted several different ways, because it's very open. Did Lucy actually know what happened? Was she actually hiding from him? Did he imagine the whole thing? I mean, he found the scarf and he heard her singing. Or was she just running from him because he was chasing her? We would imagine a scary look on his face and a gun. The fact that she was running from him would suggest that she had turned on him, but why? Could be open to debate. And the snake seems very much like a trap set up by her, but then when we went to the doctor wasn't fazed by the fact that a snake bit him, and it wasn't venomous, and you'd think Lucy would know these things. She seems to know snakes, but maybe she doesn't. Maybe that was something that was set up from the very beginning. Maybe it was set up by her. It was so open, and what happened with Snow I think was open. I interpreted that he just snapped. He just he lost the plot. He just flipped. He could have gone to her and said, you know what, I found the murder weapon. I'm really sorry, but this was why I'm with you. This is why I wanted to leave, and I'm gonna go become an officer now. He didn't have to react the way he did. She wasn't posing any threat. I mean, maybe she was, but up until that point we didn't know that. He was the one that very much instigated all of that. Just kind of went down this thought spiral. That ending was crazy. And I felt so bad for Lucy Gray when she was singing the song for the commander's birthday. She's singing about how pure Snow is. I felt so bad for her. And then come the end when he was chasing her down with the gun and he's just shooting everywhere like a crazy person. I teared up a little bit because I felt so bad for Lucy Gray and how hard she's had it, because it's so different. Victor's villages weren't there. Like, the dean gave her some money, but I don't think that was proper. I think he just kind of slipped it to her on the side. Also, Snow set up a rule that districts get food if the victor wins. Is that around in the Hunger Games that we read? Because I don't remember that. The careers, it would seem like, aren't a thing yet. They just tend to do better because they're richer districts. I'm assuming that's something that when the games get bigger and bigger, I kind of want to start taking ownership of it. I also hated it when Snow visited Highbottom at the very end and gave him Sejanus's diploma. Just the way he was so detached about Sejanus and everything that happened. And it was on his birthday, and hearing about how his parents basically adopted him. Ma was so sweet, and Snow looked down on her for thinking badly of the capital and feeling like her true home was District 2. I hated how that played out. But obviously, Snow lands on top. It works so well. He killed Highbottom at the end as well. He poisoned the drug that he took. I mean, there's no guarantee that he actually ended up taking the drug with rat poisoning, which obviously completes the full circle. Why did he kill Highbottom? I didn't really see the reason other than the fact that Snow hated him. Maybe he thought that Highbottom was still quite out to get him. Snow was very paranoid, so paranoid, and he was so determined to succeed against everything else. His ambition wanted to be president. Nothing was good enough. President was all he wanted to do. So anyone who even dared step in his way, instantly dead man walking, essentially. Like, he didn't care. The fact that I think killing Highbottom was unnecessary just lends even more so to how unhinged of a person he was. I came out of it and I just needed a minute to just because so much happened at the very end in that epilogue, and how he talks about his nemesis Dr. Gore, and I can just see it, them two coming more and more closer together, because it felt like his resistance to her got less and less, even though he pretended and he said he hated her and he claimed that he was putting more distance between them. I felt it lessen. I might have been imagining that. The way he succumbed to her worldview. When he talks to Highbottom at the end, he says it's her worldview, but really you can see it seeping into him. He's talking about how he's going to keep the games, but control and order needs to be kept. He's very authoritarian, I believe the term is. It seems like his father was like that as well. At some point I think I heard a reference about how his mother was more emotional and loving and expected his father to love her, but really he was quite cold and authoritarian. And then when he lost her compact, like the powder, and it was slush, and that was the thing that reminded him of her, but the compass, his father's compass, was fine. Is that, or is that not a symbol for his mother's emotional side and him dying, and his father's authoritarian side, the one that's standing true? It kind of represents that battle in him, like the optimistic, hopeful, Lucy Gray driven side of him, and the cold authoritarian control, I want to be president side of him. Claims he loved Lucy Gray. Might have at times felt good towards her, but it often was only times that seemed to help him, although for the Hunger Games and during the Hunger Games, his desire to be with her, I believed him, because it didn't benefit him, other than maybe the fact that he was just getting swept up in it because he wanted her to win, and then when she'd won, maybe he'd come to his senses. Come the end, he didn't. In District 12, she was the thing that was keeping him sane. He was going to run away with her, of course, only because he thought he was going to get arrested anyway. And how frustrated it was that he was going to run away with her is what Sejanus was going to do, which is what he dogged Sejanus in for, to the capital, and then he was going to do it himself. He was such a hypocrite, and Sejanus died for nothing because he was going to run away himself. So ultimately, in the end, he didn't love her because he bailed on her as soon as he could. He didn't even care if she died or not. He doesn't know, and it's so ambiguous whether or not she's dead. Just that whole situation that happened with her was so ambiguous, and this is what kind of really changed my opinion on the book, because up until this point I was so frustrated by the pacing and the distance we felt with him, wanting to see multiple point of views and wanting to be closer to the story. And we got to this end that just kind of has all these questions around it. Things changed for me, and that's when I kind of became more accepting of these things because they work with that storyline a little bit more. Speaking of pacing, 1 second. We had this really long section where we were learning about the Mockingjays. We talked into Dr. I think it was Key or something to that effect. It began with a K. And I didn't really see the reason why. His hatred of the Mockingjays wasn't fully convincing. Like at first when we saw them at the hanging, that's when he learned about them and about how much he hated them. Just kind of a bit like, ugh. He was creeped out by them and that was plausible. He then had this really intense hatred and he wanted to kill them all, and the more time went on, the more he hated them. And it didn't feel as founded as I wanted it to feel. Katniss was brought up a few times like as a potato. It made me jump when I heard it, but I don't think that was necessary either. I think that was trying a little too hard to force the connection. Lucy Gray and her similarities to Katniss, probably I think she's trying to say one of the reasons why he dislikes Katniss so much, because of the similarities between the two of them. Both had quite a big show at the Reaping. I think had Dr. Ghoul not like erased the games and people not wanted to not think about them so much in these early primitive days, on the Hunger Games there would have been comparisons. I think we've not seen anything like this since Lucy Greyberg. She had a braid as well, and she liked Katniss potatoes, and she sang the Hanging Tree song. She sung the Meadow song to Maud, and that's the song that Katniss sang to Prim and Rue. I can't remember if it was only in the movies, if it was in the book as well. Oh, that really touched my heart. And I loved seeing the comparisons between her and Katniss and the Hanging Tree. The multiple interpretations we go throughout this book of the Hanging Tree, like, it definitely feels very ingrained into Billy and Lucy's story. Snow trying to interpret these songs was painful. He ultimately thinks that it was Billy singing to Lucy. Billy had a very Gale feeling to him, and Sejanus had a very Peter feeling to him. I loved how relentless Sejanus was, how he just went back down and he stuck to his morals. Jessup as well had hardcore Peter vibes, which I'm assuming these things were just to remind us of the Hunger Games and their connection. I loved how confident she was right from the very beginning and flirted with Snow in the Rose right on the offset when he met her on the train station. I think she was smarter than people gave her credit for, because I think she knew what she was doing there. At the very end, we find out that Snow's dad was the one that came up with the Hunger Games, and that Dean Highbottom hated the whole thing. That's why they hated each other come the end, which made so much sense to Snow and his character, and it just felt so right that that was what happened. Knowing what we know at the end about Dean Highbottom and how the games weren't his ideas, all the things he said, now that I think about it, like at one point he refers to capital children as being no different to district children, and it's just in the upbringing. That kind of shocked Lucky, the presenter. It makes so much sense now. Heavensby, there was a Heavensby in this one. He was the game maker in Catching Fire that come Mockingjay turned into a rebel. So many names like I recognized, and it's paining me that I didn't know who they were, and I didn't understand the connection because it's been so long since I read them. So many of the tributes and mentors were dead before the games. Like, it was all so crazy. Everything crazy was happening with the bombs. Do we think that was rebels, or do we think that was the capital? I thought it was the capital, and then pretending that it was the rebellion. They sabotaged their own games. I wonder if too much crazy happened, if she was just trying to make it more exciting. Oh, and how awful it was when they showed Brandy's body, the girl that killed Arachne. That had Dr. Ghoul written all over it, because the capital people were disgusted by it. It's so interesting to think of the way they must have been shaped through Dr. Ghoul and President Snow's, I'm imagining, their reign. I don't even remember who was president at this time. They weren't around very much. It was all Dean Highbottom and Dr. Ghoul. Dr. Ghoul herself was crazy. The way she tested the snakes with Clemency, she didn't care. And the hospital reference that they've done mishaps at the lab before. She's just unhinged and crazy, and I want her origin story. She feels like a much bigger player. And all of the ideas about the war being a constant, and they're just so dumb. Like, well, no duh, you're ruling over these people. It's a dictatorship, and they don't like it. They don't have any lives, and just all of Janus's views just constantly dismissed, and he was the only one that had any reason to him. Listeria I really liked as well. She kind of had a pretty good head on her shoulders, and it's so sickening to think about how these people are just so ingrained in their own ways that they don't open to other possibilities. So in the bubble of the capital, how shocked everyone was. Reaper like took the flag down and started ripping it up. These people are just delusional. I'm so glad that Listeria, I think it was cleared up that Jessup didn't bring the rabies to the capital, that it was within the capital and he got it there. Like, these kids gave me hope, and I'm just so sad that Snow's gonna be the one that ends up on top. I really enjoyed all of the talk about the war and why the Hunger Games, because that was my big question, like, why specifically the Hunger Games? For a long time I still don't understand. They talked about it, but we didn't really get the full grasp of it. I was worried that they were going to leave it kind of open and you just had to interpret it. I think come the end it was solidified a little bit more, and I'm really glad that it was. But it was weird to me that they knew about the stolen school food. They later found out about the compact and the handkerchief in the snake's cage, which was very clever of him. It was weird to me that they let that go unnoticed, that they didn't stop him right away. But now we know come the end Dr. Ghoul never meant for him to become a peacekeeper. Like, she was always going to excuse him, because I think she saw in him the whole time the things that I talked about, the things that were in him from the very beginning, the cold calculated nature. She saw his father in him, I think. It's really worrying to think about Snow talk about himself, the way he thinks he's a good person and he has good morals. I really loved it when she recognized him. I was so glad that she was like, yes, I still want to be with you. Because I was rooting for Snow a lot of the time, weirdly enough. Even though he was so cold and calculated, I think it was his love for Lucy throughout the games and his determination to keep her alive. I started rooting for him, and come District 12 I started seeing a different life for him, that it was going to end the way it was. I felt so far away because there was no suggestion of it up until the very, very end. Another thing that I was kind of along with like all the frustrations I was having while reading. Then again, now come the end, I have more peace with it. I was really hoping that we'd get like a flash forward to not necessarily Snow in the Hunger Games, but just closer to it than what we are now. Maybe like a halfway point to see him like married and like president now, cement his views pre-Katniss, but older as President Snow. I just thought it'd be really interesting to see. I would like to see him like married, for instance, and he talks about it, how he would marry someone not for love, so he'd marry someone he found repulsing so that he couldn't love them. He didn't want to feel weak in that way. See how things fleshed out with Tigress, because she was really interesting, but I feel like we never really developed that relationship to the extent we could. She started so much, she didn't like what the games were doing to him. At some point she didn't like his involvement in them, and she kind of had like a more Sejani-y, empathetic view of things. I don't think she would approve of what Snow would do with the game, so I wanted to see kind of what would happen to their relationship and to see him married. I still think it'd be interesting, but I guess come the end we have some of those questions answered. It's not so necessary anymore. I think those are all my thoughts. I think I'm leaning more towards 8 out of 10 because I think talking through these things, my interpretation of them at least, shows that they're very cleverly done and that multiple interpretations could be had of it, and I love things like that. Now it's like making me think a lot more come the end, and the end just changed everything for me. But that is everything I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing morning, afternoon, evening / night. My name's Jade. I hope I see you again next time. Goodbye! It was something that in the philosophic. I'm gonna find it on my shelf and I can't for the life of me find. Oh, it's there. Oh, William Golding. I now realise I've gone down a rant, but I can't stop it. So have fun editing, Jade. Ooh. My makeup, there's a tutorial that I watched years ago and it was like in the back of my mind when I was reading this, and then I did it and now I'm not. Like, I don't hate it, but I don't think it's coming across on camera very well. Like, my makeup a lot of the time doesn't come across on camera the way it looks RL. And my nails are very green. Everything is very green. And I promise it wasn't my nails. I just wanted green nails. It wasn't because of the book. And now I'm like second guessing the way all of it looks.